a series dedicated to dissecting the most riveting royal scandals in history. This week, I'm joined by Tom Bower, author of Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, the defining book on Meghan Markle's very brief history as a working royal. Revenge is a forensic assessment of Meghan's character and her ruthless ambition, cementing Bower's reputation as one of today's leading investigative biographers. Before we get into it, Tom, ludicrous headlines over the weekend suggesting Prince Harry could somehow worm his way back into the fold. It seems like Sussex PR is in overdrive lately. Are you seeing that too, or do you feel that way?
All right, let's break this one down in the kind of tone you'd hear over coffee with your sharpest friend who's totally over the Sussex circus. So this episode of Conflict features the ever-blunt Tom Bower, the man behind Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors. If you've ever read any of his work, you know Bower doesn't sugarcoat. He paints Meghan as ruthlessly ambitious and Harry as, well, a bit lost in the fog.
Well, I do think the Sussex Overdrive is unbelievable, but I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in. I mean, I think that there are two reasons. One is I think that William wouldn't allow it, and secondly, the moment he got back to America, he immediately promoted Disney and his trip to Disney World, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which
Yeah.
makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain. So I think it's always the same. He wants his cake and eat it.
Isn't that the truth? All right. So Revenge was released in July of 2022. Since then, based on polling and media coverage, how would you describe the trajectory of Harry and Meghan's reputations professionally and personally? It feels like they've taken quite a bit of a dive.
Yeah, I think professionally they've gone down dramatically. And I predicted it in the book, but even I would not have thought it'd be that accelerated. I think personally, I think they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished. The
Right.
Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem. And I think as of this week, the signal for her great problem is that she turned up at Kevin Costner's party for the emergency workers
Which she
in
skipped last
California.
year. She skipped that last year. That's a great
She
point that
skipped it
she,
last year, and that was very critical because at that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to, firstly, be seen with Harry, and secondly, didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap and give it gratis. And this year, she is desperate to be seen,
yeah.
and that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem, financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem because he's lost his charity centre Bailey in Africa. He had better up, and all these commercial deals are declining. I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic, and I think Invictus is his only lifeline, and there'll be problems with that too.
I mean, we've
So
seen people leaving Invictus recently. Important, I think that's you mentioned the Disney special. Does the Disney special at all look to you like an influencer pivot? Because that's what I was like, oh my God, oh no. I mean, they're spokespeople.
absolutely, I mean, the moment they went there and allowed themselves to be photographed, and I thought, well, how much are they being paid for this? And quite clearly, they're being paid to promote it this week too. It'll work in the sense that I think it's Disney today and some sort of butter spread tomorrow. I mean that's the trajectory they're on, but they're going to have to earn some money.
And this conversation with him really feels like a reality check for anyone still hoping for a royal reunion. Right from the start, the host brings up those silly tabloid rumors about Prince Harry worming his way back into the royal fold, like it's 2020 again. But Bower shoots that down immediately. In his words, the idea that Harry could ever return is ludicrous.
That's true. Did anything make the cutting room floor when it came to Revenge simply due to space? I know that publishers love chopping up well-researched books, without any hesitation about like you're sitting there going, no, this is so important, but sometimes it's just about shrinking a book down.
I mean, there were, I mean, you've got to remember, it was a pathfinder, the book, and even the publishers couldn't quite believe some of the things which I discovered. And one of the big things at that time was sensitivity reading. There was a great fear that she would play the race card. And so, for example, there were great arguments about whether you could call her strong-willed or not, because she at the time was playing herself as a black woman, and black women, if they're strong-willed, seen to be a stereotype. I think that would now not occur.
Mm.
I think there were various things about her sexual life which I dropped out on the grounds of privacy laws in Britain.
Oh
I
my
think there are
God,
other
I have
things.
got to get you intoxicated, Tom Bauer. I would love to hear those stories.
Yeah. I think I've forgotten them.
Oh no.
But
Then
I
apparently they
think that
weren't that good.
they were very good.
Oh
I mean,
no.
I mean, the privacy laws are pretty strong here, and that's what she used as her weapon at the time. So
Yeah.
there were quite a few things about her personal life. I'll work them into another book, I think.
Oh my goodness, Tom Bauer. I love that deep tease right there. That's something that we can look forward to. What did you think? Because in your book, Spare, you talk about how Earl Spencer was concerned about how this marriage might be trouble. And you say at William's request, Earl Spencer weighed in. He went to Prince Harry and said, you should reconsider this, pump the brakes. His advice provoked a bitter reaction, you say. Well, later we find out that Prince Harry, since moving to the United States, approached Earl Spencer to ask permission to legally change his family's name. What was your response to that Harry would want to take the Spencer last name? And does it surprise you that Earl Spencer said, I don't advise it?
Well, the answer is unfortunately that was one of the revelations, or many revelations, in my forthcoming book, which I had and heard about this months and months ago. It was actually when they were at Althorpe filming for the Netflix series that he asked Charles Spencer, because for some reason Meghan didn't like the surname Mountbatten Windsor. If you remember, in her first uh, lifestyle series with Meghan with Them Forever, she says to Carling that her surname isn't Markle but Sussex.
Mm-hmm.
And she was desperate to get it. She said we'd never had a proper surname. And of course they did. But so it's now Sussex, although she keeps on being called Meghan Markle. But I think that she did go to, and that she wanted to get rid of Mountbatten Windsor because she didn't think it was the right name for her children at school. And Spencer said very forthrightly to their face, no, under no circumstances. I think Charles Spencer probably doesn't think the marriage will last forever and just didn't want his name to be associated with Meghan if the event of a divorce. That's my guess. But I did know that he was absolutely emphatic that she wasn't going to have his name.
Yeah, I
You've
mean,
got to remember another thing about all this as well. And of course, we might come on to this, but in uh, in Meghan's mind, she is Diana. I mean,
yes.
Diana Spencer is Meghan Spencer. And that was all part of her imagination that somehow she could inherit the glow of her dead mother-in-law. So I think that was another reason for Charles to say no.
Absolutely. If she were to separate with Prince Harry, the Diana 2.0 could continue to live thanks to the last name. That would get, that it would still give her that royal sparkle that she needs. I do have that. Let's just jump to that. Meghan believed she was as important to the monarchy as Princess Diana, you write in the book. And her visit to Australia in October 2018 only boosted that view. The more Harry drew parallels with his mother and the more Meghan must have been convinced of her importance to the monarchy. Um, do you still think she's that delusional? And maybe the answer is watching her at Kevin Costner's 805 Live event in $300,000 worth of jewelry, including Diana's Cartier watch.
Wherever she is, whether it's at Costner or in Colombia or in Nigeria or wherever, she's always, her publicist will reveal that she's wearing one of Diana's pieces of jewelry. I do think that the Australian trip turned their head in a crazy way, although she behaved appallingly during the trip.
Yeah.
But in Harry's view, this was his mother all over again. What Meghan never really understood
Two reasons. First, William would never allow it. Second, Harry just keeps proving he's more influencer than Prince. Bauer predict the next few months will be critical. Meghan's brand is failing. Harry's credibility is in tatters. The money's drying up. The royal bridge is burned beyond repair. All they've got left is a spectacle, and as Bauer cheekily says, watching them is great sport.
Probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty and all the values of the Queen and all the tradition and the 1,000 years of history. So people were cheering not just the person, but also the institution. I mean, clearly she was very attractive and she did, magnify and was magnetic for her own, in her own right. But the idea that she was Diana was always a fantasy, both of herself and of Harry. And Harry completely misunderstood his mother, who he obviously barely knew, and didn't realize what a manipulative and determined woman she was herself. So he completely misjudged the comparison between Meghan and his mother. And his mother had amazing status. She looked beautiful. She had terrific poise. She worked very hard at being a royal. She was very empathetic with a lot of sick people. None of the things that Meghan would ever dream of doing. I mean, Meghan would never go and spend day after day in hospices and hospitals and with the poor. She only wanted to go and party with Elton John in the south of France. So the comparison between the two was ridiculous, both as in looks and in poise and in background and everything else, plus the work ethic of Diana.
I I think it was over a year ago. I reported that I had heard that Prince Harry was trying to work on a Princess Diana documentary, and now it's being reported by other people. Prince Harry developing a Princess Diana documentary. You just said what I keep saying. He didn't know this woman. Like I mean, it's I don't mean to be cruel, but he's off at school. I feel like she's become this martyr saint character in his head. Is he really the authority when it comes, especially when it comes to the death of his mother, where he, and I'm not saying I should make a Diana documentary. I just wonder how accurate a documentary on his mother would be from, by him, surrounded by all of these yes people.
It would be totally inaccurate. I mean, from his own book, where he says for a long time he thought his mother had just disappeared and now believes she'd been murdered by the paparazzi, which is ridiculous. She died because she was in a speeding car with a drunken driver, not wearing a safety belt. But also, he doesn't realize that she wasn't murdered by the media. She played with the media. Diana was a huge influencer, a huge manipulator of the media. She collaborated firstly with Morton in his book, and then she collaborated in a Panorama interview. She'd repeatedly see chosen journalists and feed them information. So the idea that his mother was a victim of the media, she was a master of the media and a master of media manipulation. So he'd get it completely wrong. And of course, the one thing which I do sympathize with him is that his mother clearly was completely misjudged and to become Charles's wife. And that was a catastrophe. And in that sense, his father, for good or evil, didn't treat his mother very well. And it all became very, very sad. But I don't think I think, however, that if he did a program about his mother, that would be for money.
Yes.
And I think it would be a shocking act of further disloyalty, not least to his father. And he can't play it both ways. Does he want to come back or not? If he wants to come back, which I think will be a problem for him, he certainly can't make a film about his mother.
I think it would infuriate his brother, like you said. In Revenge, you talk about how Meghan's lack of knowledge about British history meant she could not understand that Diana had won the public's affection after years of work. That was a real investment. People felt committed to the journey because they had spent so much time watching Diana really grow up. I think that I think that pairs nicely with what we're talking about with Prince Harry. It's just that lack of understanding. She just thought that, she could burst in and say, look at me, I'm here now, everybody accept and love me. And she didn't really take time to get to know the process.
I think there was that, but I've got to tell you, my research for my new book, the number of times she was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice for two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted. And secondly, I don't believe she ever intended to stay.
Hmm.
She always intended to take the title, take the connections, and get back to California. Especially after she saw, and this I think is a critical thing in her life, that it was William and Kate who were
Yes.
going to be the stars, and not Harry and Meghan. And she didn't want to play second fiddle.
Because whether they are turning up at Kevin Costner's party or posting poetic selfies, the world can't look away. It's morbid curiosity at this point, like a royal soap opera that's gone completely off the rails. But as Bauer concludes, we're all still watching because deep down, everyone wants to know how the story ends. Will they crash and burn completely, or pull off another miraculous reinvention? At this rate, it's looking more like the former. Tom Bauer sees Meghan and Harry not as victims, but as architects of their own downfall, self-absorbed, delusional about their relevance, and addicted to fame. Their reputations have collapsed faster than anyone predicted. Meghan's Diana fantasy and Harry's Hollywood hustle have left them both stranded, two lost royals desperately clinging to relevance in a world that's finally moved on.